So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for finding some time to be with us here today. We have a very exciting presentation entitled Realizing Hybrid Cloud Using IBM Bluemix, APIs, and DataPower. And we have about an hour ahead of us. And in that time, we're going to share with you some details around the importance of hybrid cloud, and we're going to have some live working code showing you real-world architectures utilizing Bluemix, APIs, and DataPower, and how you can realize hybrid cloud using that technology. In terms of agenda, we are going to kick off with some slides just to level set about some of the key concepts that we want to discuss. And we're going to start off by discussing exactly what hybrid cloud is and why hybrid cloud is so important to your future and to the future of your cloud initiatives. We're then going to discuss a couple of different models of hybrid cloud to give you an idea about different approaches you can take to realizing hybrid cloud, and we're going to recommend one of those models as the approach that you should be utilizing in your environment. And then the second half of the presentation is going to be a live demo where we're going to spend some time showing you some real working code and showing you how Bluemix, APIs, and DataPower can come together to build a very powerful public cloud and hybrid cloud solution that allows you to reach all of your most important needs. Okay? So that's pretty much the agenda. I hope that sounds very interesting and compelling for you guys. And so why don't we dive in? And before we actually get to the meat of the matter, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about Akana. Akana is an enterprise software company headquartered out of Los Angeles, California, with offices around the United States and around the world. We are an IBM business partner with a long history of providing API and SOA solutions in IBM enterprise environments. So we're very good at understanding what your needs are and what kind of technology you need in order to realize API and SOA in your environment. We offer a unified API and SOA platform. So it's one of the most unified platforms in the industry, a single platform for both API and SOA management, as well as full lifecycle management, and also full integrated runtime support, so that when you define APIs, when you define services, you know that you're going to have a single solution that's going to allow you to both define, lifecycle manage, and run those APIs using a single set of technology. We also offer support for a lot of different IBM technology. Today we're going to focus a lot on DataPower, but we also offer great support for Integration Bus, WebSphere Systems mainframe, and a variety of other powerful IBM technologies. So that kind of gives you an idea in a nutshell about Akana, and it also helps inform discussion in terms of both our position on how you should realize hybrid cloud and also the demo we're going to see later, which is going to feature Akana products and solutions alongside IBM products and solutions in partnership to show you how hybrid cloud can be realized. Okay? So hopefully that helps. Just give a little bit of a level set about Akana. So with that, why don't we dive into the meat of the matter. And the first topic we're going to cover is what is hybrid cloud. And you can see a quote on this slide from a gentleman from Gartner who spent a lot of time analyzing and understanding hybrid cloud and why it's important. I won't read the whole quote, but you can see in bold there, second paragraph, a hybrid cloud service can, among other things, synchronize and or replicate data between public and private clouds. So that term replicate and the notion of bridging public and private clouds becomes a very important defining attribute of hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is essentially the idea that users need to realize the benefits of public cloud. The users also have a variety of investments and existing infrastructure in private clouds, and the only way to make these two work together is a hybrid model, because you cannot expect that a large enterprise is going to move all of its data and all of its functions directly onto the public cloud. And you also can't expect that a large enterprise is not going to make use of all the benefits of public cloud. So both need to be in the picture at the same time, public and private clouds. And it raises the question of how do you replicate data between them. It becomes a very, very key aspect. So in a nutshell, we can think of hybrid cloud as the set of technology that allows public and private clouds to thrive together, where each feeds off of the benefits of the other to realize a total cloud solution that meets all the needs of the enterprise. So to me, that's a really nice starting point and a really nice way of thinking about what hybrid cloud is. it then raises the next point about why hybrid cloud. Why is hybrid cloud important? And for that, we have another quote coming from Robert LeBlanc, Senior Vice President of Cloud at IBM, who spent a lot of time talking about hybrid cloud at the recent Interconnect 2015 conference. And again, I won't read the whole quote, but you can see in boldface, second paragraph again, this will help break down the barriers between clouds and on-premise IT systems. So again, when we're talking about why hybrid cloud is important, it's important because you do need to break down those barriers. You do need to ensure that everything you're doing in the public cloud can access and make use of all of your investments in your on-premise IT systems. If you could imagine a world where the on-prem systems and the cloud systems were siloed, where they knew nothing about each other and had no way of talking to each other, you can imagine that as being a pretty big barrier. Because if you think about it, your whole history as an enterprise has been a history of investing and growing your on-premise IT systems, and it's only very recently that you've been spending time on building out and growing your public cloud infrastructure. So there's definitely the possibility of a siloed approach here, where you're spending time either in public cloud or on-premise, but not in both, and you've created a significant barrier that allows each to not benefit from the other. So to kind of put that in a nutshell, I think the biggest reason for hybrid cloud is so that you can benefit from the strengths of both public cloud and private cloud. In the public cloud, you're getting cost effectiveness, you're getting automation, you're getting all the great technology that all the major vendors are providing, especially IBM, with Bluemix and with a wide variety of systems that are being made available in terms of application development and all the benefits there. But you're also allowing that to coexist with all the benefits of your on-premise IT systems, which is all of the control and all of the existing investment, and you may have security constraints while you can't move your on-premise IT systems outside of the on-premise world. So if we can break down those barriers, then each can take their benefits and tie it with the other, and you now have a unified cloud solution that allows you to realize all of your goals. Okay? So that kind of gives you an idea about why hybrid cloud. I want to dive a little bit deeper on why hybrid cloud and talk about 4 points that are very important when talking about the reasons for hybrid cloud. Let me go through them 1 through 4. In the top left, you see there most data worth caring about today is on-premise data. So this is a very important point, because if you think about it, you guys need to start coming out with next-generation cloud and mobile apps that people care about. But the reality is that if you want those to be compelling, they're going to have to access on-premise data. So there's no getting around the reality that on-premise data needs to be made available, because if you want to build compelling apps, you need to gain access to that on-premise data that everyone cares about. When I'm talking about data worth caring about, I'm talking about things like patient records in the healthcare industry. I'm talking about airline travel history in the airline industry. I'm talking about banking transactions and mortgage history and other financial transactions in the financial services industry. In government, I'm talking about information about citizens and how they interact with their government. Every single industry out there has a huge amount of data today that is very important to its users. And that data needs to be made available, because that is the data we care about. That is the data that users want to interact with, they want to use in a digital world, just as they've been using it in a away from the keyboard world in the past. Okay? Next item, top right, some data may never live in the cloud. This is another very important point. Even if you have a lot of ambition to move your data to the public cloud, it doesn't mean you're going to actually do it. There are risk factors, there are security concerns, there are control concerns and SLA concerns about why some of your data, maybe even a significant portion of your data, may never live in the cloud. Again, you may have things like patient records where you have decided that it is just too risky. I cannot put that in the cloud. I must leave that on-premise. So when you leave it on-premise, you need hybrid cloud in order to make that very valuable information available to cloud applications, mobile applications, applications living outside the on-premise environment. Point 3, bottom left, migrating data to the cloud is expensive, risky, and challenging. So again, even if you feel like you can move all of your data to the cloud, you may not, because it may just be too large of an endeavor. Point 4, bottom right, most apps worth caring about use data worth caring about. This is my most my favorite sort of point out of these 4 points, and it's a corollary to the first point, which is to say that if you want to come out with next generation apps that your users care about and that attracts your users to your business and keeps them coming back and keeps them loyal, you have to give them data that they care about, okay? And apps that are worth caring about use data that's worth caring about. Again, if you can imagine that there's an airline app that just pushes you random, anonymous ideas about your next vacation, that's not very compelling, and that's not an app that's very much worth caring about. It's an interesting app, but it's not really an app worth caring about. On the flip side, if you can offer an app that can look at my own flight history and vacation history about where I have traveled in the past, where I have vacationed in the past, the hotels I like to stay at, and so on, you can now offer personalized vacation packages for me that care about the things that I care about. And that's based upon data worth caring about. And the reason that I want to use that app, and the reason I will use that app, and I will use it a lot, is because I know that it utilizes data that I care about, which is my own history, where I like to travel, where I like to vacation, the hotels I like to stay at, and so on. So if you want to build next generation apps that are worth caring about, you must use data worth caring about. That data lives on premise. You need hybrid cloud in order to make that happen. Okay? So that kind of gives you some important points, some ideas about why hybrid cloud, and hopefully that kind of gives you some food for thought about why you should be putting hybrid cloud on your radar, why you should be thinking about it moving forward. All right? All right. So with that, I want to transition, and now you are getting excited about hybrid cloud. You understand what it is. You understand why it's important. You understand why you pretty much won't be able to move forward effectively without it. Now I want to talk about how you actually realize hybrid cloud, and I want to go through 3 different models of hybrid cloud: Ad-Hoc, Bespoke, and API-driven. And I want to give you an idea about the differences across these different models, and at the end of it, I want to make a recommendation about what Akana thinks is the right model of the 3, which will be Model 3 API-driven. But let's step through the different models. Let's start with Model 1. And with Model 1, we call that Ad-Hoc Hybrid Cloud. And the reason why we call it Ad-Hoc Hybrid Cloud is because there's no real overarching design or infrastructure in place to make it happen. It is a bit ad hoc. And to set things up, let me explain to you what this diagram is trying to communicate. We have 4 different stakeholders in the picture. We have Charlie, the CMO, who's being tasked with driving the production of all these next-generation cool cloud applications, mobile applications. As an example, Charlie could work for the airline industry, and he might be coming out with cool vacation recommendation apps that he needs to push out and make available to make his company much more attractive and competitive as opposed to other airline companies. So that's his big task in the future, very strategic. The whole organization is looking to Charlie to make sure he and his organization can come out with those next generation apps. Next stakeholder is Anna, the app developer. Anna works for Charlie, and she's the one that actually makes all this happen. She's the app developer. When Charlie goes to her and they brainstorm the next idea, they talk about a cool vacation application, Anna is the one to develop it, and Anna has to go figure out how to pull together all the data to make that happen. If we move to the right, on-prem, we have Christine, the CIO, and Christine has that traditional and extremely important job of the care and feeding of all the enterprise data. She needs to make sure that all of her systems, which are rightfully massive, are still operational into the future, are still very secure, are still able to manage all the needs of the infrastructure and of the organization. But now she's tasked with this new need, which is to make sure that she can make that data available to these new stakeholders like Charlie and Anna. So she definitely has her work cut out for her. Last stakeholder is Ed, the enterprise developer. Ed works for Christine. Ed's job is the care and feeding of the enterprise data. He deals with all of that massive infrastructure, things like DataPower, things like mainframes, things like Webster application servers and databases and so on. So Ed is that hardcore enterprise developer who spends his time understanding how to continually improve and support and drive on-premise data into the future. Okay? And you can see in this diagram that essentially what Anna's trying to do is she's trying to develop these mobile apps and these cloud apps. And so the question is how does she make use of ad hoc hybrid cloud techniques to make this happen? Well, pretty much in an ad hoc way. She's using Skype, email, texting, whatever she needs to do to go find the right people. She bumps into Ed, and they strike up a conversation. They build a relationship. She tells Ed what she needs. She needs, reservation flight information or whatever it may be. And Ed needs to answer her and say, okay, I can try and help you. Maybe I'll make some data available. What they finally arrive at is a series of ad hoc integrations. In this case, 2 different ad hoc integrations. Ed did the best he could. He just rolled out some new data, made it available to Anna. Anna did her best to understand what Ed was making available. She pulled it into her app. She tried to get it working. She was able to realize something. So it's very much an ad hoc picture. There's not a lot of planning, not a lot of infrastructure, not a lot of design, not a lot of sort of project planning, but they were able to come out with something. So you could at least call this a model that we can analyze and take a look at. So let's actually take a look at how things turned out with ad hoc. So let's again go through that list, and let's start with Anna. And Anna's experience was not so great. So she was confused and frustrated because she doesn't know how and from whom to access data. So she was able to bump into Ed. Was Ed the right person to bump into? Maybe, maybe not. Was Ed able to give her all the data she needed? Maybe, maybe not. She basically had a very tough time finding the data she needed and making it easy for her to integrate. So definitely Anna's experience was very stressful, very difficult, and not very scalable for the future. Ed, on the other hand, was angry and frustrated. He was angry and frustrated because he's getting constant ad hoc requests for access to data. Anna's just one of them, but lots of people are coming out of the woodwork now saying they have very important initiatives to build applications against enterprise data, and they need this data, they need that data, they need that other data, and Ed just can't keep up. Right? It's not his job to just stay on the phone all day long with all kinds of different developers trying to satisfy their needs. So he's definitely very angry and frustrated. Charlie, the CMO, he's getting a bit worried. His team lacks the data needed to reach its digital business goals. So he's happy that Ed was able to help Anna, but he is concerned that it was a difficult experience for Anna, and it may not be getting any easier into the future. Finally, Christine, the CIO, she is definitely overwhelmed. She knows what's needed, but she lacks the infrastructure that's needed to make this happen. She knows that Ed is being pounded with requests, and she feels overwhelmed that her organization cannot deliver based on the volume and the demand of requests that people are making on her organization for access to that enterprise data. Okay? So that kind of gives you an idea of ad hoc. Let's move on to Model 2 and see if we can improve the picture a little bit more. Model 2 is actually very similar to Model 1. It is a very similar picture in that you still have Anna reaching out to Ed. The big difference is that Charlie and Christine have gotten together and they've discussed the problem. And they've decided that an ad hoc approach will not work, and they've decided that what they need is something a little bit more planned. They need to lay aside formal budget for these projects. They need to find the right resources like Ed and Anna and maybe some others. They need to have a timeline. They need to have a design and so on. And that's exactly what they did. So they were very happy to pull that together. And they wound up with a bespoke integration. So Ed and his colleagues, they were able to, essentially do a custom build of some integration that allowed Anna to access the data that she needed. So it is a step up. Things are looking a bit better. It's essentially a more formalized version of the ad hoc approach. Now, Anna still doesn't have great tools to collaborate with Ed. She's still Skyping and emailing and texting and so on. She's still a little bit confused about how to access the data, and she still has concerns that if she needed more data beyond bespoke integration A and bespoke integration B, then she would be in trouble and she'd be back at square one, and she's right in that concern. So definitely Model 2 is an improvement over Model 1, but it still has its issues. And let's go through what those issues are. So again, let's go to Anna, the app developer. She's now feeling tentative because she knows who, but still not how. Okay, so everyone's made it all clear that it's Ed that she needs to go to, and Ed's going to now have some newfound time to do this and some new budget and the ability to plan this all out, but the solution is not all that great. And she still doesn't have a lot of guidance in terms of how does she actually access the data that Ed is trying to make available. Moving on to Ed. Ed is now officially overworked, essentially because he has a new second job. He's now an infrastructure product manager. He needs to turn all of these requests into scalable products that he can roll out and offer in a user-friendly way. That is not an easy thing to do at all, and Ed really doesn't have any additional time to contribute to this because he's already so busy with all of his other on-premise enterprise needs. So definitely Ed is not feeling very happy, and he's definitely feeling very overworked, even though he's able to come out with some of the solutions that Anna needs. Moving on from there, Charlie, the CMO. Charlie is concerned, and he's wondering if this bespoke approach is sustainable, and he has good reason to worry about that. He's very happy to have put in place these programs with Christine, but he's saying to himself, gosh, if every time we want to come out with a new initiative, a new mobile app, a new digital marketing direction, I have to, go and pay for this, expensive, bespoke solution where I have to put together a project team and a project plan. That's asking too much, perhaps, and it's not very sustainable, it's not very scalable, and it's pretty expensive. So I think Charlie is happy about this first go-around, but he's very concerned about the future. Finally, Christina, CIO, she's feeling overwhelmed. Once again, she lacks staff, funds, and expertise to build the solution. So it's great that she's able to put together plans with Charlie and try and find budget and try and formalize it. But the reality is that Christine's team, they're not product managers. They're not these kind of infrastructure developers where they come out with these first-class solutions that allow for an endlessly scalable approach to enterprise data. So she's definitely concerned that her organization just doesn't have what it takes in order to come out with all these bespoke solutions every time someone needs access to enterprise data. Okay? So that is bespoke. Definitely better than Model 1, but still lacking in some big ways. Let's close out with the third model, which is the model that Akana recommends, which is the API-driven hybrid cloud model. And in this model, we introduce an important innovation. We introduced the idea of a developer portal, and we introduced the idea of APIs. So let's start off with the developer portal, which you can see in the top right of this diagram. The developer portal becomes a home where Ed and Anna and all of their colleagues can log in order to collaborate. And so it becomes a place where Ed can publish and share APIs that expose enterprise data and can collaborate with folks like Anna who need access to that data. And it's where folks like Anna can browse and share and collaborate with the folks on-premise who are making that data available. So the developer portal becomes this very key scalable technology that allows for a great deal of interaction and which also greatly simplifies and eases the process of discovering and utilizing APIs. So that's the first very important innovation in this model. The second innovation is the use of APIs. So I think you guys are pretty familiar with API technology. It's become quite commonplace over time. It's making use of things like REST and JSON and OAuth in order to make it very easy to expose data that can be consumed by iPhone apps, Android apps, cloud applications, and so on. In this case, it's exactly what we're doing. We're using API technology. Ed can now use a universal language with both Anna and all of his colleagues and all of her colleagues. That universal language is API technology. So everything that needs to be exposed from the enterprise out to the cloud can be embodied in a series of APIs. And those APIs can be very easily understood by folks like Anna and integrated into her iPhone, Android, and cloud applications. And so with those two innovations, we have a very, very nice story that should hopefully make the lives of Ed and Anna and make the strategic future of Christine and Charlie very, very attractive moving into the future. Let's take a look at how everyone's feeling now. So Anna, the app developer, is finally feeling empowered, right? She's got it all now. She knows how to access the data. She knows where to go to. It's a very simple process. It's all shared, so she can just go and browse and find the data that she needs to access, and she can start making use of it within her domain when she's building out her application. So Anna's feeling very, very good. Ed is feeling very helpful for the first time, which is great. He knows how to satisfy his customers. He knows what to say when Anna comes to him, when Anna's colleagues come to him, when anyone needs access to enterprise data. He can either say, yes, just go to the developer portal and go and browse, and we can collaborate there, or if you don't find it there, let me know, and I can very easily use standardized processes and standardized infrastructure in order to make that new data available to you. So Ed feels like with a smaller investment of his time, he can adequately satisfy all the needs of all of his stakeholders who need access to enterprise data, which is a huge win for him. He's also very happy because he knows that he can help so many people with that access to enterprise data. Charlie, the CMO, is feeling very strategic. He can finally begin digital business transformation. He knows that whatever is in his imagination, whatever is in the imagination of his colleagues and stakeholders, he knows can be realized because that data can easily be made available to the cloud. If he wants to put together a cool vacation package, he can do that. If he wants to offer new ways to find flights or to find discounts or to find the best way to get from point A to B. He knows he can do that. Whatever he wants to roll out, whatever's in his imagination through new digital business channels, he can do because he knows the data is there. Okay? Christine, the CIO, she's feeling proud. Her team can finally satisfy the needs of the business. She knows it can be done in a cost-effective way. She knows that her team's not going to be bogged down every time someone needs access to enterprise data. So she's feeling really good about this new solution that's going to give her and her team everything that they need so that they can offer that to their users and their stakeholders. Okay? So API-driven approach, it's the way to go. You can see why everyone is so happy now that they're using this approach and why it's such an important model to utilize moving forward. One last point I want to go through is I want to take a look at the larger architecture. It is actually the architecture we're going to look at today during our demo. This is what the big picture finally looks like when we talk about an API-driven approach using Bluemix, DataPower, and APIs. And you can see at the top there, once again, we have the developer portal. And we have folks on-prem who are publishing APIs to the developer portal. Those APIs are integrating with on-premise systems. That could be things like System Z mainframes. It could be WebSphere-MQ-based services. It could be WebSphere Application Server. It can be IIB. Whatever needs to be exposed can be exposed through APIs. And that magic is being handled by a partnership between DataPower and Akana, where Akana is offering world-class API support on DataPower, and DataPower is offering a world-class gateway that can work with everything on-prem, but can also work with everything in the cloud. Okay? If we move to the left of the diagram, we also see that we have the Bluemix cloud, where we have mobile apps and we have PHP apps running, utilizing REST-based APIs and SOAP-based APIs, and utilizing a powerful Bluemix technology called Bluemix Cloud Integration Connector in order to connect up with those APIs that are being exposed through Akana and DataPower. And those APIs are lifecycle managed, and they're offering a full hybrid cloud integration story. And the end result of all of this is that everything in the cloud can consume the APIs that are published by everything on-prem, with the end result being that guys like Ernie, the end user, the guy who's actually trying to go on vacation and find that great package to his holiday destination, he can actually utilize these applications because all that rich data is available, and he's very, very happy, and he's now very, very loyal, and he wants to continue using these services because they're that cool, and they're that specific to his needs, and they're that rich, and they're that worth caring about. Okay, so we're actually going to see this during the demo, this full diagram in action, but it kind of gives you an idea. And so I hope that all makes sense in terms of the different models and why an API-driven model is so valid, and why Bluemix and DataPower running on-prem can realize this in a very, very powerful way. Okay? So hope that's very, very useful. Keep that diagram in mind as we go through the demo, because we're going to actually see all of this in action. Okay? Almost ready for the demo. So before we dive in and switch gears, I just wanted to cover a couple of things about Akana and explain to you how we think about API technology and the different products that we bring to bear on our API solutions. So you can kind of see a stack here listing out some key functionalities. At the bottom of the stack, you see lifecycle management, which is a very key part of rolling out APIs. With lifecycle management, we have a very powerful product called Lifecycle Manager. Lifecycle Manager allows you to manage every important aspect of an API lifecycle, all the way from deciding which APIs you need to come out with, to actually developing and designing those APIs, and then rolling those APIs out. So Lifecycle Manager is going to make your life easier, and it's going to help you to pull together all the different organizations and stakeholders to make lifecycle management world-class in your environment. The next two functionalities above that are gateway services and service integration. This is all about the runtime. This is all about your security and your transformation, your mediation, your integration, all the important things that need to happen at the runtime. And to handle that, we have a product called Policy Manager for DataPower that partners with the DataPower appliances to realize all of this and more. So Policy Manager for DataPower can work with DataPower to ensure that all of your gateway needs can be realized, and DataPower can become an extremely powerful API gateway that can do everything that you need it to do at runtime. The final piece of the puzzle are the top two functionalities here, analytics and developer engagement. Those are being handled through Community Manager. Community Manager is the dev portal that you saw on the earlier screen. It's the dev portal that's making it easy to collaborate between API developers and app developers. It's the place where you can browse and search and look up APIs and learn about what they're all about and how to use them. It's what makes Anna's life so easy and Ed's life so easy because it automates all the interactions between the two so that they can both produce and consume APIs in a way that's very, very cost-effective and scalable and very, very fast time to market. Okay? So that just kind of gives you an idea about the unified API and SOA platform that Akana offers. This picture here is fully unified and fully available out of box. So once you get it up and running, connect it up with DataPower, you will have a full API SOA management platform with all these features and more. So you can't get any better than this in terms of the ability to install this solution, have it fully integrated, and have it running for you in short order to realize a huge amount of very important functionality in your environment. Okay, so I hope that helps in terms of explaining Akana. We're actually going to see some of these areas in action. We're going to see Community Manager, we're going to see Policy Manager for DataPower and DataPower. So in just a moment, we're actually going to see real working code of these different, of the solution stack. All right? Finally, before we dive into the demo, just want to kind of talk about the Akana value proposition, just so you're clear about exactly what Akana brings to the table in terms of API management solutions for Bluemix and DataPower. So top left, you get DataPower API lifecycle automation. So I covered that on the last slide. You get world-class lifecycle automation so that you know that you can define all the different processes and procedures that you need to come out with APIs in their full lifecycle, and that it will be fully automated. Top right, Bluemix and software cloud integration. So we're going to see this in action today. The ability to have Bluemix services and resources utilize on-prem data through DataPower. Very, very important feature. It's one of the defining features that make the integration, the hybrid cloud between public cloud and on-prem possible. So it's hugely important to this story and to the future of your hybrid cloud environment. Bottom left, API and app developer portal. So we talked about that already with the Community Manager, but essentially you're getting an extremely feature-rich developer portal that allows you to accomplish a huge number of goals for both APIs and apps. Finally, enterprise API management, bottom right. We have a huge amount of features that allow you to integrate with all of your on-premise systems. Again, that could be things like System Z, it could be IIB, it could be WebSphere MQ, it could even be non-IBM infrastructure. So whatever you have running in your enterprise, we offer a huge amount of value that allows DataPower to integrate with that those backend systems to make them available to the cloud. Okay, so very important Akana value proposition. We allow you to take an IBM environment and turbocharge it for the needs of API and SOA management, so it's hugely important to your future. Okay? So that's it. That's the first half of the presentation, and hopefully that was useful and gave you some level set, gave you some ideas, gave you some concepts, gave you some architectures to run with moving forward. With that, I want to switch gears, and I want to spend another, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 minutes on an actual demo where you see this kind of an architecture up and running. So let me cancel out of my presentation, and let me switch gears. Okay, and I have brought up over here a browser that contains the core things that I want to show today. So what you're looking at here to kick off our demo is Policy Manager. So this is the Akana solution that allows you to define APIs and allows you to deploy them to DataPower. We're going to kick off by showing and talking about Policy Manager, and then we're going to talk a little bit about DataPower and deploying APIs, and then we're going to switch over and talk about Bluemix and show you some Bluemix stuff and show you a Bluemix cloud application. Then we're going to dive in and talk a little bit more about Community Manager and show you that in action, and then we're going to show you some mobile aspects. So a lot of different things to show you. Not too much time to do it, so I'm going to move pretty quickly, but I just want to make sure that we cover all the most important points and get you guys what you need to see in terms of what this total solution looks like. So starting with Policy Manager, as you can see, Policy Manager is an easy-to-use web-based application that all of your API developer stakeholders log into. This could be API developers, API architects, it could even be trading partners. All the folks who have a stake in your enterprise data would end up using Policy Manager. And in Policy Manager, I have this left-hand pane, which is an organization tree that allows me to organize all of my objects. And so if you have a very large enterprise organization with a lot of different users and stakeholders, this is a great place to organize them. And what I've done here is I've created a section of my organization tree called SOA Bank. And for today's presentation, we're going to make believe that we are a financial services company. We are a global financial services firm that utilizes DataPower to protect our backend resources. And we want to start rolling out APIs to make them available to the Bluemix cloud in order to roll out next generation cloud and mobile applications. So I have a part of the organization called SOA Bank, which is where I live. And inside of SOA Bank, you can see that I have a series of different folders. And in those folders, I can put all the key objects that I need to define DataPower APIs. You can see a list here of things like processes and scripts, services and contracts, policies and containers. I'm going to go through some of these now to show you what it takes to develop a new service. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the services folder, and I see a list of all the APIs that I have defined to date. I'm going to go to one that I want to work with in detail, which is called the SOA Bank Services Backend SOAP Bluemix service. So this is an API that I want to run on DataPower, and I want to expose out to the Bluemix cloud. If I click on the Operations tab, I can see the operations that are defined for this API. I have 4 operations: deposit, account balance, transaction history, and withdrawal. So those are the 4 key things that I want to expose out to the cloud. By exposing it, I now empower folks like Anna to build applications that can make use of this very rich functionality to help users do their normal banking operations. Going back to the Details tab, I can see all the key metadata for this API. So for example, I have a link to my WSDL. This is a SOAP-based service, so I have a full WSDL defining it, and I can open up that WSDL in another window, okay? And I can see all the details of this WSDL, and I can even share this with others. I can even see the different policy attached to this WSDL, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So I get a very nice record of exactly how this service is defined. Okay. I also get a lot of other bits of metadata. I get things like a list of policies attached. I get compliance results. I get consumers, which we'll talk about in a moment. These are part of what are called contracts, variety of metadata. So think of this as the homepage for this API where I can define all the most important parts of this API. I also have a variety of actions on the right that allow me to perform a number of important operations on this API. Okay? The key thing I want to talk about for this view is policy attachment, because it's so important to what Policy Manager does. Policy attachment is where you can take any policy that you've defined in Policy Manager and attach it to the service so that it can be deployed to DataPower. In this case, I have requested 2 policies be attached. The first is called Detailed Auditing, which is allowing DataPower to automatically monitor transactions going through it for this API. And the second policy is called HTTP Basic Auth Policy Bluemix, which is a security-based policy that allows DataPower to automatically add key security to the picture. Okay? Those are the 2 policies I decided to attach. You could add all kinds of other policies. In fact, we even support custom policy, so you can make up your own policy to do whatever you want. Now let's take a look at what it takes to actually attach new policy. All I need to do is click on this Manage link, and when I click on that, I get a pop-up, and the pop-up allows me to go through the list of available policies. You can see a nice list over here, and I can choose any of these policies. Or I can define new policies and then choose them from the menu when they show up. All I need to do is tick the checkbox for any policy I'm interested in, and then that policy automatically gets attached. So it's very, very easy to begin working with policies in Policy Manager and have those automatically deployed to DataPower. Let me actually show you what a given policy looks like. I'm going to click on this Detailed Auditing link, which will take me to the detail view of this particular policy. So when I click there, you can see that it takes me to there, and every policy has its own custom configuration, that talks about all the different options for that policy. Now, this is an auditing policy, so I have options like whether I want a message filter and whether I should be auditing the message size and the input message and the output message and so on. So it's a variety of different configurations that you can, suppose are going to be valid for this particular policy. If I click on the modify link, you can actually see how easy it is for me to change it. So it's a very declarative approach, very non-technical. You don't have to be an expert on DataPower, don't have to be an expert on security. You just need to know the right policies to author. And if you're an expert in that, you can take the lead on doing that for the organization. And then everyone else can start utilizing that policy by simply attaching it to their services. We have a lot of very powerful ways that we can automatically attach policies to services based on a variety of different criteria. Okay? So that gives you an idea about policy. Moving on from there, let's go back to our organization. And I want to show one other aspect. I want to show something called contracts. And contracts are represented down here in this consumer spoiler. And contracts allow you to define relationships between consumers and providers. In fact, I can open up this contracts view. And when I look inside of there, I can click on my provided contracts, and I can click there, and I can see the details of a contract. And you can see the way a contract works. It actually allows you to tie access between a given provider and a given consumer. Actually, I have a better contract defined lower down. Give me a moment here. So here's an example of a Akana Bank Bluemix contract. And you can see inside of it, you can see inside of it that I have defined a series of services, in this case just one service with all of its operations. This is my back end, that I want to make available to a set of consumer identities. And you can see that I'm making it available to a user called Bank User 1. And I can go through a workflow stage to drive this contract to completion. I can let people request access to this contract. This becomes a very, very easy way to let an API developer grant access to his API by an API consumer like an app developer. Okay? So a very, very important concept. We automatically deploy contracts to DataPower. DataPower will automatically enforce contracts and make sure that no transactions go through DataPower unless a valid contract can be found for that transaction. Okay? So another very key aspect of an API. Moving on from there, let me show you one other thing. I want to show you orchestration. We fully support orchestration on DataPower. If I go to my operation view, I'm going to one of my operations called Withdraw, and there's a tab called Process, which brings up an editor that allows me to define a full orchestration on DataPower, defining the steps that I want DataPower to go through as the transaction flows through DataPower. So in this particular case, I have a pretty simple orchestration. I want DataPower to receive the message. I then wanted to send that message to Web3MQ, which we have full support for. Then I want to call a SOAP backend, because remember, this is a SOAP-based service. And then I want DataPower to respond back to the user with the response. Okay? So this is an example of a very simple orchestration. Probably the best way to summarize this in English is I want DataPower to first send the message to MQ to audit it, and then I want it to go to the back end. So very, very simple. But you can imagine how complex this can become over time. You're only limited by your imagination. And our orchestration solution is built around the DataPower's very powerful gateway script feature, which allows you to make use of custom scripting and a wide variety of other features. So it's a very, very powerful approach to driving orchestrations on DataPower, and it utilizes core and native functionality on DataPower to make that happen. So this is another very, very key part of defining APIs. Okay? All right, moving on from there. And actually, when we get to the REST-based API, which is the second API I will show you later, we will see a much more involved orchestration so you can see its full power. Okay? All right, moving on from there, I think there's one last thing I want to show you before I'm done showing you the API model. I want to show you the notion of containers. Containers is where you deploy APIs. I'm going to open up this container view at the bottom. And when I open that up, you can see that I have defined a DataPower cluster. So essentially, all of your DataPower appliances can be represented as containers inside a policy manager. And once you represent them, you can automatically start deploying APIs to those containers. So in this case, I've defined a cluster. It happens to have two in it. You can make it larger, you can make it smaller, it might have one appliance in it, it might have 10, it's your choice. You can make the cluster as large or small as you want, and inside of the cluster, when I click on it, you can actually see that for each node, I can define things like my front-side handlers. In this case, I've defined 3, an MQ-based front-side handler, and a REST-based front-side handler, and an HTTPS-based front-side handler. You can define different front-side handlers for your own needs. But it's very easy for you to define them, and once you define them, you can start using them inside of your API to decide to host what you need where. So if you have an API that needs to be hosted on HTTPS, you can easily make use of that HTTPS listener. If you have something that needs to be hosted as a REST service, you can easily make use of that as well. Okay, so it's very, very easy for you to define your listeners. The other thing I wanted to show you is the Hosted Services tab. In the Hosted Services tab, you can define which APIs you want hosted on this particular container. In this case, I have chosen to have the Bluemix SOAP Bank Services Backend API hosted on this container because I want to start working with it. So it's very, very easy for you guys to host your services. All you need to do is find your API, find your container, associate the two together in Policy Manager, and you're done. We will then automatically take the next step of deploying that API to DataPower so that you can start using it. And this is exactly what I'm going to show you in a moment with real working application running in Bluemix. All right? All right, one last thing I want to show you, and then we'll move on to Bluemix, is I want to show you the deployment model, which is the view that you're looking at right here. So this is kind of more of a DevOps view of watching Policy Manager for DataPower actually deploy APIs to DataPower. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we take the model that you've defined inside of Policy Manager and we push it to DataPower. And as you can see, I have my 2 cluster nodes defined here. I have DataPower Appliance Prod 1, and I have DataPower Appliance Prod 2. And when I click on Prod 1 and I click on the Deployments tab, I can actually see a history of everything that's been deployed. And no surprise, one of those that have been deployed is my SOAP Bluemix service, because I hosted it on this container and I want to make it available to Bluemix. Okay? You can also see here how quickly we can deploy APIs to DataPower. Essentially, you can create an API in as little as 15 minutes in Policy Manager, and you can deploy it to DataPower in as little as 15 seconds. As you can see, my SOAP Bluemix service only took 16 seconds to deploy. You can see some other APIs that took just a little bit over that. The deployment time will be based upon the complexity of the API, but we can definitely push APIs very, very quickly and very, very cost effectively. This is part of what makes guys like Ed, the enterprise developer, very happy, because he now knows that a lot of the automation, a lot of the infrastructure that needs to be in place to make APIs happen can already be done in partnership between IBM and Akana. Okay? So anyway, that kind of shows you the real-world scenario. And of course, all of this winds up on DataPower. So I can log into the DataPower console, and I can actually show you the API as it's been deployed to DataPower. So I'm going to quickly log into that domain. And once I log in, I can click on the Web Service Proxy, and I can actually see my SOAP Bluemix API deployed to DataPower through that DevOps console. Okay? So I think we're in great shape. I think, you know, guys like Ed, this is his job, and his job is now done. You can see how easy it was. In 15 minutes, he defined his SOAP API. In 15 seconds, he deployed his DataPower. It's now there. It's now ready to run. It's now connected with the Bluemix. So with that, I want to switch gears, and I want to show you the Bluemix side of the equation, and then finally we'll see this application in action, and you'll see the whole stack up and running. So to show you Bluemix, I'm going to switch over to my Bluemix console. And what I want to do here is I want to show you 2 key things that I'm working with in order to make this happen. The first key thing that I'm working with is a Bluemix PHP service. I've decided to use PHP. You might be using something else. Maybe you're using Node, maybe you're using Java, maybe you're using Microsoft. Whatever it may be, you can utilize Bluemix in order to roll out your application. I'm using PHP in order to develop a cloud-based banking application that my users can use to do their banking. So it's a very simple PHP app. Okay, and we're going to take a look at this app in just a second. But that's the first part of the equation that I want to utilize. And this PHP app is programmed to utilize the Bluemix Cloud Connector in order to automatically talk to DataPower using APIs. Okay, So that's the first of two components I want to show. Let me go back to my dashboard and I'll show you the second component that I want to show, which is the Bluemix Cloud Integration. When I click on Cloud Integration, I can go to a tab called Secure Connections. When I'm inside of Secure Connections, I can see that I have defined one secure connection going back to my DataPower appliance running on-prem. When I click on Detail, it will show me the details of this connection. Okay, and you can see here that it has defined two endpoints that are both hitting my DataPower appliance. So this is a very powerful Bluemix technology that allows me to bridge the gap between my public cloud where I have PHP and mobile apps running and my private cloud where I have DataPower running. Okay, those are the two key aspects that we're going to make use of. So let me finally show you everything in action by going back to my dashboard, going back to my PHP app, and it's giving me the URL that I can go to access this app. Let me click on that URL. Okay, and when I click on it, it brings up the running app running in Bluemix. Okay, and you can see at the top here that I have a Bluemix URL, an IP address that allows me to host it in the Bluemix cloud. So everything is up and running. So the last piece to put in place is to actually see my Bluemix app hitting my DataPower API through the Cloud Connector, and that's exactly what I can do over here. You'll notice I have the get balance, deposit, withdraw, and history. With all these operations available to me, I can now have my PHP app hit DataPower to access these operations and actually do real online banking. And you'll notice that I have my IP address defined as the IP address that I want to use to connect. This is my Cloud Connector IP address. This is the address that's going to hit the Cloud Connector service in Bluemix, and that Cloud Connector service is automatically going to connect up with DataPower, and it's going to open up those on-premise APIs to Bluemix so that they can be utilized in this application. Okay, so we're going to click the Get Balance button. When I click Get Balance, the PHP app is going to talk to the Cloud Connector. Cloud Connector is going to talk to DataPower. DataPower talks to the back end, gets a response back, and gets me what I'm looking for. So let me click on that Get Balance button, and there you go. I got an answer back. That answer came directly from DataPower through the Cloud Connector. Unfortunately, it only gave me a balance of $0, which is not very nice. So why don't we actually start putting money into this bank, into my bank account? I'm going to use the deposit feature. I'm going to deposit, let's say, I don't know, $345.67. And why don't we say that this money that I'm depositing are proceeds from my Bluemix services. Let's say I'm able to monetize my services, so people are able to pay me for all the great services that I'm exposing over Bluemix. Let me deposit $345 to my account. There you go. Let's also withdraw some money. Let's say I want to withdraw, I don't know, $478.32. And let's say this is to go to a Bluemix conference. I want to learn about all the great new functionality coming out on Bluemix, so I need to pay for it. Let me withdraw $478. There you go. It's withdrawn. I can now go to a transaction history. When I click on Get History, I can see the full history. So you can see I have a full app running, API-driven, through DataPower, talking to a back end, giving me everything that I want from a SOAP-based standpoint to make all this functionality work. This is pretty good. This is pretty exciting. If I go back to Policy Manager, I can actually prove to you that I have this full functionality working, because when I click on the SOAP Bluemix service, I can now go to my Monitoring tab, and I can go to my Logs tab, and the Logs tab is going to show me a full history of all the transactions that went through DataPower. And as we speak, it happens to be about 10:59 in the morning, my time, which is why you're seeing transactions at around that time, a little bit earlier, 10:58. You'll notice this is my history here. At 10:57, I did a get account balance, as you recall. At 10:57, I did a deposit, 10:58, a withdrawal, and then finally I get transaction history. So I'm getting live feedback from DataPower about all the Bluemix transactions coming in. If I double-click on one of them, I'll double-click on Get Transaction History. I can actually see all the details of this particular transaction. I can see where the message was sent to, where DataPower sent the message. I can see how long the transaction took, the message size. I can see which users were involved in this because I have full security through my policy. I can also see recorded messages, so I can see the actual request message going into DataPower, and I can see the response message coming out of DataPower. Okay, so not too shabby. I have a fully operational API, SOAP-based, running on DataPower, connected to Bluemix, that is now utilized by a PHP application to enable full online banking. So very, very exciting, and you can see how easy it was for me to do this. You can see why Ed is so happy. He knows that in record time, he can satisfy any need that comes his way in terms of exposing enterprise data out to the cloud. Okay? All right, good. So that was the first part of what I wanted to show. Let's now switch gears a little bit and talk about the developer portal, because that was one of the key technologies that we laid out in Model 3 that showed you why that model was so powerful. So I'm going to switch over to Community Manager, and I'm going to log in. Remember, Community Manager is that dev portal that makes it very easy for everyone to collaborate. And when I log in, I get a very simple screen. And by the way, Community Manager is meant to be skinned and branded for your organization. So typically you'll have your colors and your branding and maybe even some advanced functionality that you want to offer on the portal. This is the home where everyone goes to see APIs and collaborate. So you're going to want it to look its best. My particular portal is not particularly branded, but you can imagine that yours will be. When I click on the gears icon at the top, it gives me a list of all the APIs in the system. One of those APIs is the Akana Bank Services Bluemix API that we were just working with. So the very same API that's running on DataPower is now represented in the dev portal so that it can be found by any app developer who needs access. When I click on that link, it gives me the home page. You can see it's giving me the location in Bluemix where this API is running. And it's also giving me a wealth of functionality, things like message boards, things like monitoring functionality, where I can see charts and I can see usage data. I can see which of my operations are being used, how often, right? So a lot of very rich information. I can see documentation. I happen to not have any defined for this particular API. Legal aspects, visibility. I can see all the apps who are using this. You can see my PHP app is one of those apps that's using it. So this is kind of the API as exposed and promoted to the world. And it's a very, very simple view to use, and it allows for a lot of self-service capabilities. Now, API is only one side of the equation. There's also the app side. So if I click on this app link, this PHP app link, it's going to take me to the app view. And in the app view, I'm able to define things like my security credentials. I also have a monitor tab where I can see how this app is using different APIs. As you can see, it's only using one API, so that's 100%. I can even see things like logs, and I can see charts, all customized to the needs of this particular app. So it's very easy for app owners to get very simple views into their apps to make them more productive in what they're doing. I can also, of course, see all the APIs that this app is using. Once again, there's only one, which is the Akana Bank Services Bluemix that we talked about earlier. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's available with the dev portal. It only touches on all the functionality available, but you should see this as the new home of all your APIs, where you can enable a huge amount of collaboration, a huge amount of sharing of all your DataPower APIs. Okay? So it kind of gives you a very high-level idea of what's available in the dev portal, and it's the tool that all of your app developers and API developers will be using on a regular basis in order to interact and collaborate. Okay? So hopefully that gives you a good idea about how we were able to utilize this architecture in order to make a very powerful solution available in PHP in Bluemix. We're running out of time, but I want to show you one last demo, and then we have a couple of slides I want to close with. In this last demo, I'm going to show you a mobile view. And to kick off the mobile view, the first thing we're going to do is show you a REST API that I have defined in Policy Manager. This REST API is going to support a JSON interface that can be used by my mobile app to make it much easier for that mobile app to do its job. And one of the things I wanted to show you, I promised that I would show you a more advanced orchestration. I indeed have a more advanced orchestration for my REST-based API because this API is doing automatic REST to SOAP mediation. Remember, the backend service is SOAP, and that has not changed. It's the same backend that I use with my SOAP API. But now I have a REST JSON API, so I need to do some mediation across that, which is why my orchestration is more sophisticated. One of the things I do early on is I have a script. Remember, I said earlier that we support DataPower gateway script out of box. This is an example of a gateway script that allows me to take a JSON message coming in, where I can pull off data like the amount of the transaction and the reason, and I can bind that to an XML document. And then automatically, the API on DataPower is going to route that message to the SOAP backend and wrap it in the SOAP envelope, because it has these abilities to do automatic mediation for you through the power of what Akana adds to DataPower. So that's the first step of what I'm doing. I'm creating an XML document from a JSON document. The next thing I'm doing is I'm doing that very same auditing to MQ that I did before. Then I'm calling the SOAP backend, and then I'm replying back with a response. By the way, the response is going to be SOAP, but once again, DataPower is going to automatically mediate it to REST JSON, because it understands that the front end is REST JSON, and the Akana functionality on DataPower is going to make that happen for you automatically with no additional effort. So what you're looking at here is a very, very powerful REST and SOAP mediation made possible through Akana's deployment of API technology to DataPower and DataPower's ability to do powerful mediations using gateway script. Okay? So that kind of gives you an idea about this API. Other than that, the API has a lot of similarities with the SOAP API. The differences are that it is a REST JSON interface. It's also using a basic auth security as opposed to a SOAP-based security. But the way that you manage it, the way you deploy it, the way you utilize it is very, very similar experience as to how a SOAP service would work. Okay? And to actually show you this in action, what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring up a mobile app. So I'm going to bring that up over here. You can see my emulator on the screen. And I'm going to go and navigate to my mobile app. And remember, this mobile app was created in Community Manager Dev Portal, and it requested access to the REST JSON API so that it can do mobile banking in a mobile app. So I just clicked on my mobile app, and I launched it. And now I want to log in, and I'm going to log in using the very same credential, very same account that I used for my cloud-based PHP application. And when I log in, you see the same kind of operations that are available in the cloud version. You can get balance, deposit funds, withdraw funds, and get transaction history. So when I hit get balance in just a moment, this mobile app is going to hit the Bluemix cloud connector, same cloud connector that we used previously. It's then going to, cloud connector is going to forward it to DataPower. DataPower is then going to do its REST to SOAP mediation, forward it to the back end, get back the SOAP response, do further mediation back to JSON, and send that back to the mobile device through the cloud connector. So very, very powerful interaction, allowing a mobile app to feel like it's integrating with a very simple REST JSON interface, where in fact, it's integrating with a highly complex enterprise backend to gain access to all that rich data that it needs to get its job done. Okay, so let me click Get Balance and see what happens. And there you go. I get my balance response that came directly through DataPower, through the REST JSON interface. I can also click on transaction history, and you can see I'm getting the same history that I got in my cloud app. I'm getting the $478 for the Bluemix conference, and I'm getting the $345 as the proceeds from my Bluemix services. Okay? So that shows you how easy it is to adapt your back-end enterprise data to all the needs of your cloud environment. That could be mobile apps, that could be cloud apps, whatever you need. One last thing to show you is inside of the developer portal, I should be able to find this API, and I should be able to look at its monitoring. Here it is right here. If I click here and I click on monitor and I click on my transactions, I can actually go to my logs, and I should be able to find this last transaction history. I open up the last transaction. You can see in info that indeed it was a get transaction history request. And when I actually click on the response message and I click on body, you can actually see the response, which is a SOAP XML response that's automatically mediated to JSON. Okay? Very, very powerful solution. It's just as easy to support mobile apps as it is to support SOAP-based applications, all done through DataPower, all done through the back-end integration. using things like orchestrations and security and all the other rich features that we bring to bear. So you can start imagining how easy it will be for you guys to start coming out with these kinds of APIs and feeding that data to all of your app developers who are trying to generate next generation applications. Okay? So that pretty much concludes the demo. Definitely had a lot to share, and we were able to get through a lot of other things that we'll be able to share with you later that we didn't have time for. But overall, I hope you're kind of seeing this as a very, very powerful architecture and solution that will help you to realize that third model of hybrid cloud integration and help you guys to find and meet all the goals that you're facing into the future. With that, let me quickly switch back to my presentation. And I am going to close out just a couple of slides, and then we'll finally close out the presentation. Okay? So what are the key takeaways from today's session? 3 key takeaways to summarize. Key takeaway number 1 is that hybrid cloud will play a key role in enabling your organization to deliver on the promise of digital business transformation. I hope that was made clear throughout. Hybrid cloud plays a very key role. Your most precious data is on-premise data, so you need to care about that, and you need to make that available to your public cloud in order to generate next-generation applications. Key takeaway number 2, an API-driven hybrid cloud strategy is the optimal model for meeting the needs of all stakeholders and making hybrid cloud work. So you have different approaches you can use for hybrid cloud. The only real approach that's going to meet your needs long-term is an API-driven approach. Ad-Hoc approaches, bespoke approaches, pulling in lots of different technology to try and build a solution. None of those approaches are scalable for the future. None of them are cost-effective. If you guys want to go down the optimal road and choose the very best approach for your hybrid cloud strategy, API-driven is really the only way to go. Okay? Third takeaway, Akana and IBM have partnered to deliver world-class integration solutions utilizing Bluemix APIs and DataPower. So hopefully that became very clear during the demo. You saw Bluemix in action, you saw DataPower in action, and you saw APIs being hosted and connected up with the Bluemix cloud in order to make the development of cloud apps and mobile apps very, very easy. Okay? So hopefully all of those takeaways were very clear, and hopefully you find those all very compelling points and will motivate you to think about your different hybrid cloud models and how you want to tackle this moving forward. Okay? And that's about it. So let's definitely continue the discussion. Please do visit us at akana.com/resources, where we have a lot more material for you to engage with. A lot of material about SOA management, API management, lifecycle management, cloud integration, DataPower, all the key topics we discussed today. We have a lot of exciting material, a lot of white papers, data sheets, recorded webinars, so a lot of very, very valuable information. So please do visit us at akana.com/resources. Also just to visit us at akana.com, where we have a lot of other great content for you to engage with. Okay? So that's pretty much it. That concludes our presentation. Hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully this is a great entry point for some next steps in terms of exploring your hybrid cloud strategies. We'd love to chat with you and discuss in more detail about how you can utilize these kinds of architecture and what other kind of functionality IBM and Akana bring to the table to make all of this very, very powerful and very, very useful. So with that, we will close. Thanks again so much for your time, and we're looking forward to connecting with you soon in order to help you realize your cloud and mobile challenges utilizing DataPower and the rest of the IBM platform. So thanks again for your time, and talk to you soon.
The leader has disconnected. The conference will be terminated in 5 minutes. The